many other factors. I think that ultimately, I think we'll wind up there, but it's a matter of sooner than later because there are lives on the line here.
Mhm.
So healthcare is a big deal for me. One of the other issues I'm personally afflicted by, and I think millions of other people my age and younger are dealing with, is student loan debt. It's up to I think $1.5 trillion of our country's debt, second only to mortgages, and it presents a massive burden on the students who are afflicted by this. But it presents a massive problem for the people who have this debt that they can never escape from. In 2005, I think it was, George W. Bush's administration made it so that you can't escape, you can't bankruptcy out of student loan debt. So once you take this on, you're stuck with it for the rest of your life. And even then, in a lot of the fine print for the loans, they'll say you may be forgiven your debt if you die.
Mm.
Maybe. So
Yeah.
possibly. We'll see at the time. But it's a huge weight on so many Americans, and not only that, but the cost of college to begin with is a huge financial barrier to some of our greatest minds. We could have students, prospective students who want to go to college, and they could be brilliant. They could have the cure for cancer in the back of their mind, but we'll never find out because they have to work 40 hours at Walmart and then go work 30 more hours at McDonald's across the street. And that's wrong. We can't be locking behind our greatest minds behind unreasonable financial burdens. And even then, like, it's the existing debt still needs to be dealt with. We need to deal with the cost of college. Ultimately, we need a tuition free model. But for now, we have to stop the bleeding however we can. I do have a plan for dealing with student loan debt in a meaningful way that would help the students and their communities and basically everyone involved. Uh, but perhaps that's a little bit beyond the scope of this interview.
Yeah, well, we can certainly put a link up to your website as well so people can read that there. So let's talk a little bit about gerrymandering. The 16th district, for people who don't know Ohio very well, is a very bizarrely drawn district.
Yes, it
It's
is.
sort of really long and skinny and includes multiple counties, lots of different municipalities that are extremely different and have different interests, different concerns. And so, what are your thoughts about gerrymandering and about fair ways to draw districts?
Well, gerrymandering is another one of those reasons I initially wanted to run in this race. Typically, this district doesn't have very many Democrats willing to run in it because it's so drawn against us. The 16th district used to just be the western suburbs of Cuyahoga County. The last time it was redrawn, it roped down to include parts of Medina County, all of Wayne County, and parts of Portage, Summit, and Stark counties. And there's a massive disconnect between the people who live in these different regions. Like Wayne County is very rural compared to where I live, which is Westlake. Um, and these aren't people that necessarily share the same values. So to rope them all in together is a clear ploy to silence a good deal of voters, and that's exactly what they've done here. That's exactly the entire goal of gerrymandering. Personally, I'm very glad this, or at least I'm hopeful for the Supreme Court case in Wisconsin regarding gerrymandering there, where there's a chance for the Supreme Court to outlaw partisan gerrymandering. But it presents a huge challenge in this district to have someone that can represent accurately these suburban cities and these vast tracts of rural county. Uh, and I think that's one place where my candidacy really stands out, though, is that I have the background that will help me relate to the voters no matter what part of the district they come from. And I think that that's hard to get in a lot of candidates that can kind of appeal to that wide range of people. Whereas I'm from a working class background, I clawed my way into the middle class, and I barely hang on by the thinnest string. And I think that that's something that will help me relate quite a bit to the rural voters who believe in being the self-made man or what have you. But it's definitely something that I think needs to be addressed. If I'm in Congress and the Supreme Court doesn't handle this, I'll be doing everything I can to handle it legislatively through those means. But it's wrong. I can't. It's hard to believe it has gone. We've gone on so many years in this country without having addressed this before. It's so when people see these maps, they know it's wrong. Because Democrat or Republican, Republicans took advantage of it in 2010 in Ohio. Democrats might be able to take advantage of it in 2020. It's wrong because even if it's drawn into your party's favor, your party your representative has no reason to represent you because they have the R next to their name or they have the D next to their name. So by virtue of that letter, they'll win however the district was drawn. A lot of the districts in Ohio have been competitive for a very long time. But here in Ohio, at least, we're hoping that we can still flip 2 or 3 of these districts despite the gerrymandering just because of what everybody thinks and expects is going to be a very strong year for Democrats.
What kind of reception have you been getting as you've been working on your campaign in the 16th? Do you think that there is an energy toward flipping that district?
Absolutely. I've been getting a pretty solid reception everywhere I go. And what kind of surprised me is you can't see me over the podcast, but I look a lot younger than I actually am. And people are always, and I should say I'm 31, but people always say I look like I'm in my lower 20s or something like that. But they're always saying they're so glad to see young people getting involved. And like, well, I'm not that young. But they have a point. And that's, again, one of the points that I'm trying to make that makes that favors my candidacy over any of my opponents in the primary is that if in any election now we have to rely on millennials. They make up one of the largest voting blocks now. If we can't appeal to them and get them out to vote, then our chances of flipping any district are very low. And when the millennial voter can looks at me when they hear me talk, they know that I understand their problems. Like I was there just a few years ago myself. I was in college staring down the barrel of the student loan debt that I'm going to have to deal with as soon as I graduate, trying to find a job in an economy that doesn't really want to pay workers a fair wage. So I think that that is an important aspect to my candidacy in general. But anyways, everywhere I go, I've been getting a pretty good reception. It's only gotten better with time. I know. So like I mentioned, I majored in physics, and I always tell people to apply to necessary stereotypes. Before I started doing this, before I started running for office, which was almost immediately after Trump got inaugurated last year, uh, I only really spoke to big groups of people when I had a PowerPoint presentation next to me and some Excel graphs or something like that. So it's been a learning process for me. Even back then, when I was stammering a little more often and struggling to get over stage fright, people still were like they were excited to see someone young getting involved, someone with some new ideas who was eager to get into DC and make a difference. And that's ultimately what I want to do. I'm not going there to be some passive voice that no one ever hears from or sees from. I plan on going there and being loud and making my presence known and making all of DC know that there's a new generation coming in and we're ready to take charge and fix the mess they've left us.
Yeah, and speaking of passive voices, Jim Renacci is the current representative, and of course he's not running again because he's running for, I don't know, governor, senator, whatever it is today.
Senator now. He decided to instead of lose the governor race, he'd rather lose the Senate race.
Okay, okay. But I know that my parents have certainly complained about trying to get a hold of his office to register their thoughts on healthcare or the tax bill and just getting no response at all, or maybe getting a letter months later that
Yeah,
doesn't really address what they're talking about. So I'm glad to hear that you intend to be responsive to constituents and to
absolutely.
listen to their concerns.
Yeah, and I think that this is the way I see it is the founders originally envisioned the government to be of the people, by the people, and for the people. If you're not coming back and talking to the people in the district, who are you voting for, or who are you voting for in DC? I mean, and honestly, I think it speaks a lot to the level of corruption we see in Congress today. People like Renacci, they don't care one iota what their constituents think. They care about what Trump wants or what Paul Ryan wants, and that's wrong. And so one of the things I've been stressing throughout my campaign, another one of the things I should say, is that I plan on being there for the district. I know the district is large, and I know that it is full of a lot of people that don't agree with each other. That was the way it was drawn. But I want to do everything I can to have town halls everywhere I can across the district as often as possible, whether it's in Wayne County, or over in Stark County, or here in Westlake. I just think it's important, and I want the people to know that I'm doing this to represent them, not some company, not some corporation, but the people. That's who the representative should be accountable to, and that's how I want to restore it to in the 16th.
And if people are interested in joining your campaign or helping out in some way, how can they do so?
Well, there's a mailing list they can sign up for on my website at www.godfreyforcongress. That's GODFREY.com. You can find me on Facebook. My page name is Aaron Godfrey for Congress 2018, and they can follow me on Twitter. So Godfrey for OH16. I try to be as responsive as possible through all forms of social media, But if you sign up for the mailing list, or if you follow me on Facebook, you can message me on Facebook or email me at the address on the form on my website, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. One or me or someone on my campaign team, we try to be as responsive as possible and keeping in line with that philosophy of representing the people and being accountable to them.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm really excited to hear about possibility of change in the 16th district, and I'm especially hopeful that there can be an end to the ridiculous gerrymandering that's going on there. So,
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, of course. It was a pleasure.
Our theme music is called Sweeter Vermouth and was composed by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. It is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. Our logo was created by Matthew Weflin expressly for Two Broads Talking Politics and is copyright 2017. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or at twobroadstalk on Twitter. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and TuneIn. Please let us know if you have any trouble finding us.